Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. I am Dr. Bill Kanaski, and we have a great guest today, trial attorney out of Fort Worth, Cody Gamora. Cody, how are you today?
I'm good, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm happy to have you because I like to have guests on, and I like to have guests with interesting backgrounds and perspectives, and I think you're going to provide us some of that because I think you have a very interesting background, and you're down in the Fort Worth, Texas, do a lot of work in that area. Now, it sounds based on what I've read about you, it sounds like you're pretty much a Texas guy, right? I mean, that's
I am, yeah. Yeah, born and raised in North Texas.
wow. So that's yeah, everything's big in Texas, right?
Yeah, yeah, just about, yeah.
Was it George Bush that said, "Don't mess with Texas"?
Yeah, I think everybody says that now. So we got signs
Yeah,
up on the highway as you come in. So
yeah, and Courtroom Sciences headquarters is in North Texas, so there's a lot of Texas stuff going on. I just happen to be in the Orlando, Florida office because that's I'm a Florida guy, you're a Texas guy, but I would argue the two best states in America right now. But let's uh, let's not go down that road, right? Because then we'll open up some cans of worms.
right.
Well, again, thank you for coming on the show. Kind of met you through it via LinkedIn. I like some of your posts on LinkedIn, and one of the topics that has come up a lot. I've seen a lot on LinkedIn. I haven't seen too much like formal, like written, papers um, on the topic, but kind of like the generational differences between attorneys. Again, whether they're plaintiff attorneys or defense attorneys, it's probably the same thing. And how you have this overlap, right? And generations collide. One of the old jokes that I find hilarious, and the joke goes, "Do you know why grandchildren and grandparents get along so well?" Like, for example, I mean, I was best friends with my grandparents, right? So grandparents and grandchildren get along really, really well. Do you want to know why? They both have a common enemy.
That
Right?
makes sense. Yeah.
And so you see this like generational, if you bump up against to another generation, you tend to collide, but then you get the skipping effect sometimes. So I think it's interesting. But prior to becoming a trial attorney, can you walk our audience through your background? Because I find this fascinating, and I love the questions. I always ask trial attorneys, like, how did you get here? Like, where did it start? Because and the ones that come on the show and tell me, like, "I wanted to be a trial attorney when I was in the 5th grade." I'm like, "Get out of here. No, you didn't. It's not no, and if you did, there's something wrong with you." There's typically a little bit more of a jagged path to from point A to point B, but kinda tell us, when you're growing up, what you wanted to be and kinda how you got started and how you ended up here, Cody.
Yeah. So I did not want to be a trial attorney when I was in fifth grade.
Good, good.
You
That means
know,
you're normal.
yeah, I've got a pretty long life story, humble background and everything, but essentially it amounted to me wanting to be a cop growing up. I never thought I was going to go to college or anything, but I wanted to be a cop because I wanted to help people, and I didn't like bullies. So, um, I wanted to drive fast and catch people that were doing bad things to society, and so I never really lost that, but I did, you know. I was poked and prodded to go to college when I was in high school. I had pretty good grades, so I went to college, and ever since I thought about going to college, I wanted to be a lawyer. So that was going to be the next step for me after college, and that's what I did. But I never lost the itch to want to be a police officer. And so while I was in college, I'd flirted with the idea of going to the FBI or CIA or DEA. DEA was going to be number one on my list. But I grew up wanting to be a street cop, so I wound up going to the Arlington Police Department. I was really impressed. They have their own academy. I was really impressed with their training regimen. They basically double the amount of in-service training that officers do every year. Had a pretty good SWAT team, and I wanted to work around the stadiums. So I did that for about 4 years until my back doctor told me I wasn't going to last 20 years. Um, but I went to law school first and then the academy. I did not take the bar exam right out of law school. I made the mistake of taking the bar exam in 2020, about the worst year to choose to take the bar exam. So
Yes. Yeah.
I got to take one of the online bar exams. I got to take the very last Texas bar exam because Texas had switched to the uniform bar exam after that. But passed it the first time and went to the DA's office after that, here in Fort Worth, and did that for about a year, and was given an opportunity to work at a civil defense firm in Dallas. And I did that for about another year. Still had the itch for criminal law, and I wanted more courtroom experience. I got a lot of it at the DA's office, but then started doing criminal defense in Fort Worth, and now I'm in a transition period back to doing that civil defense work. Got some courtroom experience, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Now listen, Cody, some of the best trial attorneys I've ever seen in my life. I mean, men and women that are just badass in a courtroom. 9 out of 10 of those I've seen come from they have strong criminal experience and they tried cases all the time. And I mean, every week they were in front of juries. I think that's really um, priceless. And I see other attorneys, primarily defense attorneys, in your age group that just don't have that experience, and so you may be the same age, right? But, that criminal experience, I think is so important. Can you talk a little bit about that, about, being in the courtroom frequently, um, what you learned being in a courtroom so early and so often, particularly when the stakes like, in civil litigation, it's how much money your client's paying, criminal, it's your ass on the line, or it's your client's ass on the line. Can you talk about your experience with that and how it's helped you to mature and grow as a trial attorney overall?
Yeah. So when I went to the DA's office, I was like, man, I've chased down murder suspects. I've driven fast. I've done all the stuff you can do as a cop to be able to say, like, stress is no thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I got to be the guinea pig for the first jury trial in Fort Worth right after COVID, and it was like right after I started at the DA's office. I showed up my first Thursday on the job. They're like, "Hey, you're in trial on Monday." I was like, "Okay, cool. What am I doing?" And I got to trial, and it was a very good criminal defense attorney I was going with, and he mopped the floor with us. Like, and the main thing I noticed is he was so comfortable in the courtroom. I was like, that guy's been in the courtroom a
Yeah.
lot. And so one of the things, I'm still a new attorney. Like, I've only been licensed for 3 years, but one of the things I always tell people who are just starting out is, like, you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and
It's
that level of
hard.
uncomfort is going to go away.
I mean, it's a stressful environment. Um,
Right.
And there's really no, the margin of error, right, is pretty low. And the fact that you got in there and noticed, and also I think, and if you talk to Dr. Steve Wood, who co-hosts this podcast oftentimes and has several guests on him, so he does a lot of he's done a lot of research in his career on attorney credibility. And, one of these things that pops up is, you have an attorney that looks comfortable, right? And how can you talk about how being comfortable leads to perceptions of your confidence and how that kind of transcends into your ability to do voir dire and jury selection in a very effective way, then go on to your opening statement and about how important that is, because if you don't appear comfortable, it's going to be really hard to perform in front of a jury and come across as effective, right?
Yeah, well, obviously part of that's going to be like knowing your case and knowing
Yeah.
what you want in a jury going in, like before you go to trial. And the more comfortable you look, the easier it is for the jury to look at you and say, that attorney believes what they're selling. And if they don't think that
That's
you believe what you're selling, you're going to lose your credibility.
I think that's it right there. And it's in fact, that's the number one thing on that, and there's no rank order. One of the top things I teach witnesses is you have got to own your conduct. You've got to own it and you've got to
Yeah.
believe in what you did. And this is the tricky part. You got to believe in what you didn't do because that's what wins over a jury. Because if you're wishy-washy on something, it's just it's just not going to work. So, well, I find that. So, how long were you an actual police officer?
4 years.
And did you do some of that stadium work, being a cop around the stadiums?
I did my last 2 years in Arlington. I was actually in the entertainment district and tourism unit. So I went straight to the unit. That was my goal, was to work around the stadiums and the hotels, and I went straight there.
Okay. Tell me your craziest, like you had to like bust up a couple of like tailgating, just crazy stuff going on. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
like you have
Yeah.
to like give me something juicy for the audience where, yeah, you know, I'm sure because I mean I've been to Cowboy Stadium, right? I mean I've been to tailgating around there. I've seen some crazy stuff. I'm sure you've seen something kind of nuts, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I've responded to shooting calls and stuff, but what used to kill me is most of the fight calls that I seemed like I was responding to were Dallas Cowboys fans fighting each other. I'm like, why aren't you fighting the Eagles fans or the Giants fans? Like, why are you fighting each other? But the biggest one I ever responded to, and like the baseball games are usually pretty tame, biggest one I ever responded to was it was like 13, 15 family members, extended family, and all that. They hated each other, and they all just happened to be at opening day for the Rangers back in 20. No, it was 2019. I think it was 2019
Oh,
because it was probably pre-COVID. But yeah, they got into this huge brawl, and like I want to say like 6 to 8 people had to go to jail, and they're all family members, and so we had to transport them in different cars and stuff, and it took a
you
long
know,
time to sort that out.
thankfully during the holidays, my family is not like that. But yeah, I could imagine that's pretty that is nuts. A family member. But I think what you said, Cowboys fans fighting each other, I could totally see that. You know, you go to Philadelphia. I grew up outside of the Philadelphia area when I was young, and they're I mean they're the most aggressive, just worst people on the planet, and they tend to beat up all the visiting fans, right? So you would think in Dallas you would maybe get something similar, but no, the Dallas Cowboy fans seem to. I think it's the frustration of the last 25 years just not being able
Oh,
to
it's got to
get a
be.
job is what I think. So I could see some rationale behind the Cowboys fans um, beating up on each other and. As we approach the NFL playoffs here, we'll see if they beat each other up some more. Something that you posted on LinkedIn that kind of got this whole thing going was um, talking to jurors at trial, particularly during jury selection, to really define. Because I think something what you said on LinkedIn, I was like, yeah, this guy's got it going on. Like, everybody knows who the plaintiff attorney is and what they do. Like, everybody knows.
Right.
All you gotta do is go drive down your local interstate and see all the billboards or turn on your TV. I mean, everybody knows. No one's really sure what the defense attorney does. Now, maybe in criminal they do, maybe that's obvious, right? You're trying to keep your client out of jail, right? And I think because some of the TV, starting with the OJ trial, right? People have figured out what the criminal defense attorney does. The criminal civil attorney, um, never really well defined in the media or in TV shows or movies. And you brought up that you think that's important to educate them on that, and I completely agree and think that's fascinating. Tell me your thoughts on that, and why that's important to you.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, a lot of jurors, they probably go in thinking that, well, the defense attorneys, the insurance company probably hired them, or they may not even know that. They just on the civil or criminal side, I think many jurors have a preconceived notion that the defense attorney, they're just a not guilty for pay, like somebody just paying them so the client can get off scot-free and the defendant doesn't have to face liability. And like I've asked jurors point blank, what do you think my role is? And they will tell you like, well,
Yeah,
your job's to make sure he gets a not guilty,
yeah,
and which isn't true. And I've always said to people who want to be good at lawyering or anything, like you want to run a marathon or you want to win cases, like your job is not to run a marathon. Your job is to be a runner,
yeah,
and that should be the goal, is to be a runner, and your goal is to be a good lawyer. And I think we need to do a better job of selling to the jury and letting them know our job is not to win this case. Our job is to make sure that it reaches a reasonable conclusion, whether or not that, we're going to say, yeah, we're liable, but they're asking for too much, or, this isn't our fault.
yeah. And if anything, on some of these typically movies or Netflix, or go back to Aaron Brockovich. I mean, have you seen how the civil defense attorneys are portrayed in movies? Oh, it's terrible.
It's the big
Some
bad corporation.
big bad corporation, particularly some of the shows I've seen based on like the pharmaceutical industry, right? And some of the opioid. It's like, God, if you're a civil defense attorney, you know, you're this shadowy figure, walking around with the briefcase full of cash, paying people off, and being extraordinarily unreasonable. And in those movies and those TV shows, they make the plaintiff attorney out to be, the hero. So I do think it's important for defense counsel. Which, by the way, I really never seen. And and you came up with this. To your credit. I mean, all credit to you. I've never seen or heard that question asked by a defense counsel. Like, what do you think I'm doing here? Right. Well, I think that's
Yeah.
important because I think there's some assumptions that the jury knows everything about, right? That, who you are and what you're trying to do. So I think that point's fascinating and a good, something good for attorneys going forward, defense attorneys, to maybe work into their voir dire and to get that discussion going.
Yeah, yeah, and depending on what the jurisdiction is, what court you're in,
Yeah.
like you may have a very quick jury selection process, like 30,
Yeah.
45 minutes at the most. And so that's something I
Yeah.
like to throw out there at the beginning. And some attorneys will phrase it like they'll have their PowerPoint slide up and they'll phrase it um, like I know of an attorney who does like a fear list where they're like they put on the slide like they fear that the jurors are going to resent the job that we do, and I don't like to do that. I like to see where the jurors mindsets are at so I can let them know right off the bat, I hear what you're saying, but that's not my job. My job is to make sure that my client gets a reasonable outcome in a fair trial.
Absolutely. Um, Now let's talk about um, and you've seen this, you've been part of it. I've been part of it in my career. Unfortunately, I'm transitioning into the, you know, upper tier of the old guy. Just crossed over that threshold, turning 50. But generational differences, um, you know, between lawyers and different skill sets. So, yeah, like one of the most obvious things, I give a lot of speeches on proper construction of opening statements and juror cognition and how to reach the 2023 2024 right juror. And what I see when I consult, when I give one of these speeches, or if I consult an actual case where I'm working with an older attorney, say somebody that's, you know in their 60s, they've been doing this for 30 years, right, 35 years, is, they want to do the things that they learned 30 years ago with today's jurors. And the jurors have now we're on like the third generation of jurors. You got, the word generations obviously out. It's the end of the baby boomers. You got Gen X, Gen Y flooding things, and you got Z behind them coming in strong. A lot's changed. And I noticed that the more veteran attorneys struggled to adjust, right? Because that 1 hour opening statement, okay, was fantastic in 1983. It was because jurors had a very different attention span in 1983, right? And then you do that in 2023, and these jurors check out mentally in 10 minutes if you don't hook them and keep them in, and they can't they can't sit there for an hour. They don't have the patience and on the attention span. And then so that's a part of it is generational differences from attorney to jury, but there's also in-house, right? In the law firm, or in the corporate legal department, various generational gaps on the same team, and a lot of head bumping going on. I remember when I first got to courtroom sciences, I was the youngest guy there. And these older guys were trying to push me down, and they didn't like any of my ideas. And when I tried to sell those ideas, I was getting the "you don't know what you're talking about," right? And there was this immediate resistance, and it obviously ended up okay. Well, so, in some areas it didn't end up okay, but in most areas it ended up okay. But I think that's a struggle that you've seen and been through, and I think it's probably pretty common at law firms. Talk to me about your thoughts on generational differences uh, between attorneys, working at the same firm or in the same office space.
Yeah, so I mean, I've seen attorneys who have been practicing 20, 30 years. They're adaptable,
Yeah,
especially with technology. And that's a big thing too. Like if you're an attorney going into a courtroom you've never been before, you got to know what their how their technology
yeah,
works. Um, Technology is a big thing, but just changes in the law, but changes in the juror mindset. Like some of these attorneys that have been practicing since before social media was invented, or since like Google was a thing. Like um, jurors' minds are open to the world, but they're also very short. Like some jurors can't even scroll through one social media platform for more than 2 or 3 minutes before having to switch to the next one. So
yeah.
you gotta catch their attention and catch it quick.
Mhm.
And that's something I started doing too. Just I'm not big on social media and, myself, but I did start watching reels and stuff, and like it can get addictive, but it also sometimes it'll give you ideas on if I phrase it this way, that's going to click with something that's going around on social media nowadays, and they might start to like me just because
Hey,
I
listen,
just quoted their favorite YouTuber. So,
I listen. I have been very anti social media from a posting perspective. I don't. When it first came, like I had a Twitter account. I mean, and I'd be like, but this is back in the day, right? This is like 10 years ago, and or whatever, I'd be, watching a college football game, drinking beer and, posting, God, these refs effing suck, right? Yeah, stuff like that, which is not going to do anybody any good. But I've, in being a litigation consultant, I've seen a lot of social media posts, pop up in litigation of, my witnesses saying and doing dumb shit, really dumb shit on social media. So I've been very anti-social media, and I think it's ruined our society in many ways. That being said, I'm a very avid observer of social media because I want to learn, right? And whether that being TikTok or Instagram, those are two that I'll be also X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll go through those every day. And part of that is for me um, to learn because there are certain topics I like to listen to and I like to learn things, whether it be a fitness topic or a history topic or a music topic, right? But a lot of attorneys, a lot of plaintiff attorneys are on TikTok, like, given I'd like to keep an eye on them, right? But it also
yeah,
forces you to know, okay, here's how young people are getting their information every day.
yeah.
And so if I can learn how they're perceiving information, I can learn something about that. So when I am working with a witness or with an attorney, I can use that to in my consulting skills because I know how a jury processes information, and I know, speaking of social media, of what they like, what they don't like, how long something is, how short something is. So I actually think that that's something important it's okay I think it's okay to be anti-social media from a posting perspective, but I think if you're an attorney, um, you you kind I think it's wise. I think whether a plaintiff or a defense attorney, I think it's wise to keep an eye on it to kinda learn what other people are doing, what younger people are doing, and also, by the way, it's not just younger people, you have older people learning how to use TikTok, right? Learning
Yeah,
how to use
that's your
Facebook.
entire jury pool.
That's your entire jury pool. So, I used to be, like, anti-social media, but if you're anti-social media, now you don't know how it works, and you don't see the, "Hey, wow," every video on TikTok is really 60 to 120 seconds, right? I mean, like, knowing that shows you how people process information, and I think there's some benefit there. And have you adjusted your style, based on, what you've seen in social media? Because like I mentioned before, that 1 hour opening statement is not, is not gonna cut it. And I'm telling attorneys now, and telling a guy like you is typically not a problem, but telling the veteran attorney that the less is more approach is highly effective. They really struggle with that. What are your thoughts on that? And have you seen that inter office with other attorneys like, "Oh, no, I learned it one way, I'm gonna keep it that way," and that can really backfire on you?
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it still works, but to me, it's rare. I don't like using a checklist for a case that
Yeah.
to analyze a case that was developed, 20 or 30 years ago. I think every attorney needs to know social media just because that's going to be a heavy part of discovery nowadays. Plaintiffs' attorneys are always going to want to know, was that truck driver on Facebook or
Mhm.
Instagram or anything at the time. Um, but yeah, that's something I've seen where some
Yeah.
attorneys will treat a certain type of case a certain way, and they're only going to prep for it this exact same way every single time. And
Yeah.
no matter what the elements of the jury charge is going to be or what the case is like, that's a different person. Those are different
Yeah.
people, different investigators, different everything. It's a different case.
Yeah.
And some attorneys will do the exact same. I'm from Texas, so I say voir dire. Um, but
Voir dire, voir dire.
they'll do the same jury selection presentation in
Yeah.
PowerPoint for every single case, just change a few facts, and that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, things change. Things change, and if you're able to adjust, I think good things are gonna happen. If you fail to adjust, I think not only are you doing your client a disservice, but I think it's short-sighted. I think you can always learn in life. I just turned 50 and I'm still learning. I'm an avid learner. Number one thing I like to do is learn. So if I have any free time, I'm out there reading something to get better in some area of my life. And I think trial tactics is, is the same way. I think the problem and something that you circumvented because of your experience is um, for people in your age bracket as a relatively younger defense attorney, the courtroom experiences are few and far between.
Right.
And so younger attorney. So I guess I guess my next question to you is what and I love asking this question, and I love having younger people on. Uh, Based on what you've been through, what you've seen, we've all made mistakes. I think making mistakes, while terribly painful at times, is the absolute best way to grow and learn
Right.
possible. Can you talk about maybe some of the slips you've had, professionally, and how you overcame them, and kind of the God, gee, I wish I would have known that, right? To help, because I'd like to give guidance to younger or middle-aged attorneys that are anxious. They want to grow, they want to get promoted, they want to become partner. You've been through a lot of this stuff. I'm sure there's been some pitfalls. I'm sure there's been some successes. Kind of tell us kind of what you learned, and if you were going to advise somebody, say that's just coming in, right? Maybe they're a year in or 2 years in, and they're looking to you for mentorship. What's some of like the pointers maybe you'd give them based on what you've been through?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I'd tell them, and this isn't just with lawyering. It's not an official statistic or anything, but I think like 80% of being good at anything is learning how to deal with people,
Yeah. Yeah.
knowing how to talk to people. And, I was a police officer for 4 years. I was talking to people
Sure.
numerous times a day, strangers, having to carry on conversations, having some very uncomfortable conversations with them. And so that'd be one thing I'd tell them is like, you gotta you gotta learn how to deal with people. And part of that is like when you get a new case assigned to you or something, um, pick up the phone and call the plaintiff's attorney. Let them know that they're on your radar and you're going to work that case starting from the time that you get the lawsuit. And sometimes you'll kind of find out what their strategy is and where their mindset is just by a quick 5 to 10 minute phone call. But just learning how to deal with people and talk to people, that's big. And you got to be proactive in that.
Now, did you now one of my struggles, I have no problem talking about this, is I really lacked mentorship. I was kind of ahead of my time, and I kind of had to learn things the hard way. Again, it's a great way to learn. It's also the most painful way to learn. And if I would have had some mentorship, I think I would have not stepped on some of those landmines. Um, do you think younger attorneys should seek out mentorship? I think it's something that's missing. Um, I would prefer defense firms kind of have that kind of hardwired into their system. A lot of them don't, right? It's all billable hour, billable hour, billable hour.
You
I
know?
think mentorship is something that's just desperately lacking in the industry on the defense side. See, plaintiff attorneys, oh no, 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 no. Lots of mentorship because they know how important it is and they're not on a billable hour. I see a big gap here. What are your thoughts on mentorship and how to get it?
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably been one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career is not seeking mentorship. I think there are opportunities for it, but you're right. Part of the issue with on the civil defense side is every attorney's busy trying to get those billable hours and everything,
Yeah,
and so I think they're less likely to give the time than the plaintiffs bar. But there are plenty of attorneys out there who are willing to mentor, and I think I haven't done a good job in the past, but young lawyers just don't do a good job in general of seeking mentorships and local bar
yeah,
associations. Just go to some of those, and you'll have somebody walk up to you wanting to mentor you just to make sure that their area of the local bar is strengthened every single day. And so that'd be another piece of advice I'd give too is if you don't have a mentor, start going to local bar events, young
yeah.
lawyer events, and things like that.
Ask for it, number one, and number two, I don't think it needs to be one person per se. I think you can receive mentorship from multiple attorneys, whether it be someone in house or somebody at the local bar association or somebody that you meet at a conference. I think is a big deal. So younger attorneys, I think it's really important. Now, here's the problem: you have this again, kind of newer generation of attorneys and boy, they get a lot of heat. They get criticized a lot. They get criticized a lot because of the whole work-life balance thing. They want the corner office after 3 years of experience. They want to go home at 5:01. They're not working on weekend, right? They take a beating. But the other thing, if I'm part of that, is kind of like this fierce independence of I don't need to listen to anybody. I don't need mentorship, right? Um, I think that's a mistake, young attorneys. I think it's a big deal to find a mentor, maybe even a couple of different mentors, and allow them to help you. Right?
Right.
They should have. I mean, really, it's every defense firm it really should have, whether it be quarterly or monthly or whatever, it's a kind of an open, whether it be an hour or something, is have the young attorneys, let them vent, let them, do some problem solving, let them know what your headaches are, the pain points and stuff, and how to get through them. And I think that's how you're going to become a better attorney, uh, and faster. So I think it's an important topic. Let's wrap this up with kind of okay, you kind of told us where you've been and how but it sounds like you're in a little bit of a transition. Kind of tell me what is Cody's plan for 2024, and what do you want to accomplish, from a professional standpoint?
Yeah, so I'll be joining a local civil defense attorney in Southlake. It's about 15-20 minutes from the DFW airport,
Nice.
depending on which terminal you're going to. But his name's Jeff Wolf. He's been practicing a very long time, but I sent a resume in. They reached out, showed me the firm and everything. I was really impressed with the firm, so I'll be starting with them next week. Working
Outstanding.
primarily.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And I'll be working primarily on catastrophic injury cases, but Jeff works on all sorts of things.
Yeah. Is there certain, whether it be transportation or construction or product liability, is there more of an area that you think you want to focus in, or is this going to be kind of more broad? Just catastrophic injury really doesn't matter what industry it's in.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got a wide array of cases that he wants me to work on. And honestly, I'm open and adaptable to whatever he wants to throw my way. I've worked on a lot of trucking cases in the past
Yeah.
just because of my background as a police officer and investigator, and I've worked commercial accidents as a police officer. So there aren't many attorneys who can say they've actually been on scene where
Yeah.
a semi truck accident has happened. So that and construction, pre-litigation investigations at construction sites and things like that. I did a lot of that, a lot of work on that stuff.
Well, outstanding. Well, Cody, it was great to have you on the show. Uh, I think your background is really incredible. I think a lot of people can learn from you. Um, Again, the combination of being a police officer, also having experience as a criminal attorney, getting all that courtroom work, I really think that's going to help you going forward. I think it has helped you, and thank you for sharing that with us. What is the best way, if anybody in our audience, whether it be client or another defense attorney or whoever, wants to reach out for you, have questions, or wants to throw a case your way because something happened in the Fort Worth, Dallas area? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
I mean, anybody can reach me on LinkedIn or
LinkedIn's the
my
best.
you can reach me at my personal email. It's cody.gomora@gmail.com. That's cody.gomora@gmail.com.
Outstanding. Cody Gamora, thank you so much for being on the show. I think this was a great conversation, particularly the generational stuff, the mentorship stuff. Very big into personal growth, professional growth. So thank you for talking about that. And to our audience, need a really, really strong 2024. We are going to keep bringing you material every Monday morning here in the Litigation Psychology podcast. So thank you so much for participating, and we will see you next time.